Hi everyone, and here we go with the first of my reviews of Fuji lenses, and I'm starting with an immediate classic, the Fuji XF 35mm f1.4. One of the original Fuji XF lenses, it currently costs around £350 or $450 US. It's your classic fast standard lens, with its useful full-frame equivalent focal length of 52mm and very fast aperture of f1.4, meaning it lets in lots of light and can give you some nicely out of focus backgrounds. Everyone loves a good old-fashioned fast standard lens. The Fuji system really was born for lenses like this. Well, let's take a look at its build quality. The lens is very nicely made indeed, even coming in a nice presentation box. There's a manual control aperture ring, which works perhaps a little loosely, but the aperture can be set to automatic on the ring itself, which can be handy. The manual focus ring turns very smoothly and it works electronically. When manually focusing, it's not really very responsive. The autofocus motor is averagely fast and it produces a little noise as it goes, but it does at least work quite accurately and the noise is unintrusive. It may be a problem while shooting video though, even in manual focus mode, as your camera's microphone will easily pick up its movement noise. The lens comes with one of Fuji's crushed can metal lens hoods, which I actually really like, and the filter thread is a small 52mm. Overall, the build quality is lovely, although I'm not totally convinced by Fuji's direction with its autofocus systems. When you try to focus manually, the motor just doesn't respond very well. Now let's take a look at image quality on a 24 megapixel Fuji X-T2 camera. At f1.4, the lens is very sharp in the middle of its images, although we're seeing a touch of ghosting and purple fringing here. In the corners, that ghosting turns into outright softness. Stop down to f2 for a slight improvement there, and perfection back in the middle of the image. That really is a very sharp image indeed. f2.8 is just as good as expected, and the corners are now beginning to smarten up. Corners are good at f4 and at f5.6, and at f8 they seem to reach their peak of sharpness. So, while the corners are weak at wide apertures, the rest of the image frame is very impressive. The lens is more than sharp enough for portrait photography and, when stopped down, general photography. Now the lens can focus as closely as about 28cm, not bad for a fast standard lens. Unfortunately, at f1.4, close-up image quality is pretty disastrous, very soft indeed. Things improve at f2, but close-up image quality only really becomes acceptable at about f2.8, so a tiny bit of a black mark there. When it comes to working against bright lights, well, you'll definitely want to use the interestingly shaped lens hood which is supplied. Flaring is plentiful here. Finally, let's take a look at bokeh, or the quality of this lens's out-of-focus backgrounds. At f1.4, obviously, you can get very out-of-focus backgrounds. Generally, those backgrounds are reasonably smooth. But in the transitional areas, we tend to see some unpleasant green outlining behind the subject, particularly with busy backgrounds. So overall, in some ways this Fuji launch lens has classic written all over it. Classic, but not perfect. It has optical issues. But it's so versatile and it takes beautiful pictures that are more than sharp enough, except right in the corners, but who needs corner sharpness when you're shooting at f1.4? This is kind of an essential lens, I think, for Fuji owners. Another option is their much newer 35mm f2 lens, which I will try out one day. I've heard that the f2 lens is a touch sharper with much better autofocus while being a little smaller. But ultimately, f1.4 is f1.4 and I'd rather have the extra speed any day. Despite its optical imperfections, I'm very happy to recommend the Fuji 35mm f1.4 and its lovely pictures to any Fuji camera owner.